everybody. Happy Friday. Hope you're not yawning like me. We got started a little bit late here. We're going to do a 45-minute show today. Have Justin Martin joining us today. What's up, Justin?
Hey, Christian. Good morning.
Good morning. We've had quite an eventful week, I would say, this week. There's a lot of stuff that you guys have been doing with like Danielle and Garrett and Steven as well to like investigate a lot of this freight fraud. We're going to have Dan Hoff from TIA come on shortly to talk a little bit more about that too. But like, catch me up on some of the like crazy findings that at least you, Danielle, you guys have been learning. I've seen pretty much every other post from Danielle, at least about like the more, just like a lot more language violations that are taking place.
Yeah, so we're not trying to like pick on one particular carrier, but like you start seeing patterns and patterns emerge, and it's basically a lot of the shippers out there. They have these open platforms that anybody can post their trucks onto to haul freight, and there's basically zero barrier to entry, and because of that, you just get this flood of all these shady carriers, and every time one of them gets into a horrific crash. We can find photos of these wrecks online, and we look up the DOT numbers, and you just start connecting dots to everything. Like these corporate entities are connected to previously shut down MCs, and thanks to the tools that Garrett has been building, that makes it a lot easier to really dig in and start putting connects nodes onto like the larger webs and seeing how they're all interconnected.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to pull up. Danielle just posted like a few minutes ago, actually, like by state, which states have like no, or actually, hold on, I'm going to try to interpret this. So this says auto service violations, no valid commercial driver's license. Basically by state, which states have the most amount of auto service violations. So this is from June 10th to July 6th. I haven't seen this before yet.
This is the first time I'm seeing it too. Danielle
literally posted it 7 minutes ago. So
yeah, she's fast. She's super fast.
Hot off the press. So it seems like Texas is just way in its own league, completely in its own league in terms of like auto service violations. I wonder why that may be, because I would.
It's a border state, so you get a lot of cross border freight going, and we see Facebook groups everywhere where they're hiring drivers, and as soon as a driver like a lot of these groups, they won't reply back and forth with the drivers on Facebook. As soon as somebody replies, they immediately tell them, "Hey, reach us on Telegram." So I think a lot of this stuff kind of just operates under the table.
Yeah, Telegram. There's a lot of under the table stuff that takes place over Telegram. That's like where majority, I would say, of the underground trucking world actually exists, which is like it's actually pretty crazy.
That stat with Texas though is insane. Like you would like just gut feeling, not even knowing the numbers, you would assume California, Texas, maybe a little bit of Florida too, but definitely the border states. It's funny that New Mexico isn't right there, or Arizona, even though they're both border states. But
I would have expected that they're definitely up on this chart.
Yeah, but
for sure.
I guess because of Texas and you got Laredo. Laredo is and El Paso, just those two ports of entry right there are massive inbound truck lanes from Mexico. I think it was 2 years ago, Texas State Governor Abbott tried to stop every single truck coming across the border to inspect them, and that got shut down after like 2 weeks because so many shippers were livid at all their trucks being held up.
Damn, that's wild. Well, we're gonna have Daniel Hoff join us here shortly as well. I think he's already here actually backstage. We'll bring him up. Hopefully he's ready, but maybe he can chime in on some of this stuff too. So, Daniel, how are we doing?
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can actually see you here. But how's it going?
Excited.
How's it going, Dan? Is it Dan? Can we go by Dan or Daniel? Which one do you prefer?
Dan, Daniel, never Danny.
Okay, never Danny. We'll make sure to keep that one in mind. How are things going?
They're going pretty good. We're having some really good success here at TIA, getting our message forward, and then just in general, for me, getting to the end of the week is nice. It's relaxing. Friday is a good time to kind of do stuff like this, catch up on some emails, and just kind of take a moment and like just reflect on everything that we've gotten done this week, which has been a lot. So that's pretty awesome. How about you guys? How are you doing?
We're doing good. We were, as you probably saw, we were diving into some of these crazy stats that are being found out on by some of our awesome community members in the FreightX space community. Would love to actually hear some of your input on some of that stuff as well. But maybe just real quick, Dan, if you can real quick just introduce yourself just for the audience that hasn't seen you on the show before, that'd be super helpful.
Absolutely. So I'm Daniel Hoff. I'm the VP of Advocacy for TIA, the Transportation Intermediaries Association, representing primarily freight brokerages, but a broader sector of the industry like that.
Cool. And basically, if you're a freight broker, for the most part, you're registered with TIA almost certainly at this point. And there's a lot of resources that TIA comes in and provides for brokerages as well. It also acts as a voice for the brokerage community as well. So a lot of the concerns that brokers might have about the community, TIA is kind of that really dominant vessel that kind of helps push things up to be reformed in legislation or whatever it may be. That would be a correct kind of.
Yeah. So like you just mentioned, we have about 2,000 members. My primary role is to advocate for our members in the broader industry on Capitol Hill. We were in a transportation reauthorization year. So if your viewers don't know, that's the primary legislative vehicle for setting transportation, particularly surface transportation policy for the U.S. So we're talking roads, bridges, tunnels, everything that we use every day. And so I spend and my team spends a lot of time on Capitol Hill talking about issues, whether that's cargo theft or strategic fraud, whether that's safety regulations. We talk about these things constantly with both Capitol Hill members of Congress and then the administration. And so it's a primary function here at TIA. Government affairs is extraordinarily important. It impacts what our industry does and how our industry is regulated, and then therefore the growth that our industry can experience over time. So it's really important. But like you mentioned, TIA really does have an amazing education program. We provide a lot of resources to our members in terms of bringing new brokers into the industry, helping brokers advance their own businesses, and just network and meet and greet. So we have three major events a year. We're coming up onto Policy Forum, which is our fly-in in September. So any TIA members listening, please try and join us in Washington, D.C. Make sure your voice is heard on September 15th to the 17th. So TIA is a huge resource for the industry, for brokers, but also more just the broader freight community as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the broader freight community has been becoming more and more vocal on X in particular. I don't know, Dan, if you spend much time on X, but it is definitely trucker heavy. Yeah. Like I will probably say, Justin, would you agree on that?
Yeah, honestly, out of all the social media platforms out there, Facebook is huge, TikTok is huge too. But we call it FreightX on Twitter, so we have like our own little ecosystem here.
I'll have to follow. I mean, I actually don't have an X account, so I have to follow. I love kind of hearing from. One of the things that's most important to me, just in terms of advocacy, in terms of understanding the industry, as I mentioned last time I was on, I'm new to this position. I'm 6 months into it. So hearing from people that are doing this every day, whether those are freight brokers or truckers or, companies creating technology around this space, that's really important. So having an avenue to do that in kind of an unfiltered way is really interesting and helpful to me, because we obviously TIA focuses on our freight brokerages and our core members, but trucking and independent operators and all of those different groups within kind of the trucking space are really important to what we do. Obviously, brokerages wouldn't exist without trucking and the other modes of transportation and vice versa. So it's having an avenue or having a pathway to kind of have that conversation and understand what people are doing at the ground level is really important. So I don't, but I might create one just to kind of follow and join that.
I was going to warn you. If you're going to go this route, the feedback you're going to get on Twitter, especially, it unfiltered, as you say.
It is definitely unfiltered.
It's going to be unfiltered. So
you take everything for what it's worth, right? Understand where it's coming from and understand who's saying it and how they're saying it.
But you also have to kind of like figure out which accounts are like really neurotic almost. They sometimes say just completely really out there stuff, and you eventually just kind of realize which ones are the accounts that will be always commenting the craziest stuff ever, and then you just kind of whatever you get past it.
I think social media.
Something that's like very important to drivers too is just feeling like they're being heard. So having a voice on a platform that they're on is huge.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things we talk about a lot in government affairs too. Making sure that the voice of the everyday person, the person that's working in this industry, regardless of where they are in the industry, is heard. We talk about grassroots advocacy all the time, getting more brokerages involved, getting more employees of brokerages involved in communicating with Capitol Hill. And so it is about having your voice heard. Sometimes people kind of feel like they're yelling into the void, and that's not productive, right? So you really have to give people a path to have that expression, to tell particularly their elected officials, from my vantage point, the elected officials, what's impacting their business, what's impacting their lives on a daily basis. When we talk about these issues, and I'll use it again, cargo theft and strategic fraud, when we talk about these issues and we go in and we tell members of Congress that it literally impacts every product that's in front of you every day, from eggs on your tables to the chair you're sitting in to the computer you're looking at. I think illuminating that for them is amazing, and it's really helpful. And hearing it from the people that live it every day is even more impactful. So that's why we obviously have a fly-in, but we also have digital advocacy tools and other ways of kind of people getting involved. I'm a professional. I do this every day, and it's important to have me, but having those voices is even more important.
Shouting into the void is perfect, because I say that all the time. Social media is akin to shouting into the void, and sometimes the void shouts back.
Sometimes it picks up. Sometimes it picks up, and people like it. We'll see. Sometimes the void likes you, and it's received pretty well.
Yeah.
Dan, what else? Anything new in the kind of like the legislation side that has been making progress in terms of freight fraud? Maybe new, I don't know, standards, new regulations around, I don't know, any regulation that is meant to be helping prevent fraud?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I'll point to, so I think you guys wrote about it, and so I'll just kind of pick up on that. The secretary announced a kind of a trucking forward slate of initiatives. I think those were really important for us. I think the two that we kind of focus on is, they framed it as double brokering or, illegal brokerage operations as part of the announcement that they had, that's going to be a focus area for the administration, for DOT. We applaud that. We think that the broader kind of fraud and cargo theft conversation has to happen at the administration. We've had a lot of engagement with FMCSA, particularly on this issue, things that they can be doing. The administration has been extraordinarily responsive and extraordinarily engaged. They understand that this is not the issue that it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. This is something that has evolved over the last few years to become something that's driven by international criminal organizations, that is highly organized, that is a different breed of what has been happening in the past. And so their engagement and their highlighting of that has been very rewarding and very kind of refreshing, in the sense that we have an open door. We have that engagement with the highest levels of FMCSA. They're listening to us, and they're looking at ways to be helpful, which I think is awesome. The other thing that came out in that announcement, and that TIA has been a partner with other groups on, whether that's a OIDA or ATA, CVSA, is on truck parking. We think that's a huge issue. A trucker has a very hard day. It is stressful. It is sometimes frustrating to do what they do. And you need to have a place where you can safely park your truck, rest, relax, take a moment, sleep. It shouldn't be in an unsafe location. It shouldn't be somewhere where you're putting your life in danger because you just don't have a place to park your truck. And so the administration taking up that mantle of finding additional funds to create opportunities for more truck parking. TIA has been a leader on that issue along with other organizations. And we continue to support legislation in Congress on that. So those two issues, particular that the secretary highlighted that they're going to be tackling, I think are really just positive for the industry overall.
Shout out to our friends over at Truck Parking Club. I know they're making a pretty significant difference as well too. Which I'm actually not sure how that funding for the truck parking plays with the private sector. If it's like actually being granted to the private sector to be developing more parking spaces, or if it's completely separate, and kind of parking availability is going to be built out more by the government. I didn't have time to kind of really actually look into that. But Daniel, do you happen to know?
I don't know how that particular program that they're rolling out is going to flow, but in most cases, federal granting flows from from DOT down to the states, and then through MPOs and other organizations to funnel the money to where it needs to go in terms of programmatic goals. How this particular program works, I'm not entirely sure. I know that they're allocating a substantial amount of money to it, so I think that's the important part of it. The funding mechanism, I think, is actually the most important part. If we're putting money towards it, over time, it should happen.
No, this would actually be bad for truck parking clubs, because the way they operate is they just take private property and allow the property owners to have truck available parking on their lots through the market that they provide. So if you're not a fan of truck parking club, this is probably good news for you. I don't see them going away anytime soon. They got a great operation, and they grow a lot faster than the government too. There was that huge parking lot in Wyoming that was built a couple years ago that they spent tens of millions of dollars, I believe, on. Somebody broke the numbers down, and it was like $130,000 per spot.
Wow.
Once they finish calculating the actual costs. So yeah, you can petition the government to try and make more parking available, but it's going to be slow to come out, because none of these towns or municipalities want truck parking in their area. And whereas what Truck Parking Club is doing is all that space is already available, and these guys own the property, and they're just like, hey, do you want to charge a couple bucks a night for a truck to park here? Here you go.
Again, Justin, do you ever hear about a reasonable cost, like for per spot, like what would be would be considered very efficient cost spending? Because $100,000, like, it does seem like a lot of money, but I actually have no point of reference as to like what would be, I don't know, SpaceX or Elon level efficiency for getting a parking spaces done. Is it like $1,000 per space? Is it $500 per space? I have no idea. I was just curious if either one of you would happen to know.
I don't.
I don't know. I've never built a parking lot in my life.
Yeah.
I would say too, I would have to kind of look at the program structure that they're working through, but just because dollars flow down to the state doesn't mean they're necessarily push out a private sector actor. There could be a public-private partnership opportunity. There could be contracts that the state puts out to expand truck parking. So it's not. It is sometimes the government doing something. Sometimes it is the government doing something in concert with the private sector through a contracting opportunity.
Yeah. I feel like we should have somebody from Truck Parking Club actually come and talk about this, because they probably know much more about it, at least than I do, for sure. I also know that Evan has been going and advocating for legislation to change about this. So I wonder how the whole team there looks actually about the public sector funding, if they actually think it like detrimental to their business or not. But I imagine probably it won't be to some extent. But anyway, what else has been going on at TIA? Dan, you said you've been at TIA now for 7 months. How's the new gig overall?
I love it. I mean, I love interacting with our members. One of the reasons I came back to the trade association space was the kind of engagement that you get with industry. I've worked in transportation policy and lobbying for about 20 years. I started in trade associations. I went to the I went to the public sector for a little bit, and then I went back to the private sector, and now I'm kind of back to trade associations. And one of the things that's amazing about trade associations is the connectivity you have with people doing whatever it is they're doing. In this case, running freight brokerages and that in the supporting universe. Connecting with those people every day and understanding what you're doing is helping their businesses, and in this case, helping the broader supply chain. That's one of the things that motivates me and gets me kind of going. So the staff here has been amazing. It's a really good team. It's kind of lean and very kind of focused on what we need to get done, which is the best thing you can say about any trade group, right? It is efficient and it is very focused on helping our membership, and then also helping the broader kind of supply chain be more successful. And it's been an amazing education for me. So in all the transportation work I've done, I'd never worked with freight brokerages before. So kind of understanding this really successful, ubiquitous kind of part of the supply chain that is huge. It's $435 billion a year in annual economic impact. And then just having
you said how much a year?
435 billion.
And that's what freight brokers
and the connective tissue that it creates across the supply chain. So and being so successful that people just kind of don't know it exists. I mean, one of the things I do on Capitol Hill, I spend about 10 minutes of every meeting just explaining kind of where freight brokerages sit in the supply chain and how important they are to making sure that things move from point A to point B.
How do those conversations go? Because we being in the logistics, like we love talking about this stuff, and like the more you're talking with other people, like the eyes light up and everyone's excited. But I talk to my wife or friends or anybody that's not in logistics. I can watch the life like leave their eyes as soon as I'm like, oh man, 3PLs and blah blah blah. Is that the same thing on Capitol Hill?
No, I would say we've got our pitch pretty clean, and just in terms of explaining the industry. I think particularly for the staff that we're talking to for the first time, or the staff that is still kind of building out their transportation chops, understanding kind of how important freight brokerages are, how ubiquitous the industry is, how successful it is, and the fact that, again, most people don't know it exists. That kind of piques their interest, right? They're like, wow, I had no idea this is how it works. Because if you talk about freight stuff, right, you think trucks, you think container ships, maybe air freight, and rail. You don't think how those things are connected, right? And so creating that narrative around that freight brokerages really connect the entire supply chain together and enable products to go from their point of manufacture, their point of production, to the end consumer. That's a pretty amazing story to tell. So if we do it right, no, I'm not getting eyes glazed over. Sometimes when we talk very specific policy stuff, sometimes it gets a little arcane, and that's when you kind of have staff that goes, okay.
And drifting away.
I swear you're reading my Twitter account, because I say that all the time. The greatest trick the supply chain ever pulled was convincing people it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Most people, and that's how you want your supply chains to be. You go to the store, you want your thing, and your thing is there. It's when the shelves are empty that everybody's like, well, wait a minute, how does that work? And then they realize, oh, it's actually really complicated.
Yeah, no,
I'm not getting my stuff. Explain to me why. And if you can't give me an explanation, I'm going to go figure it out. And everybody tries to become a supply chain expert all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, it's 100% right, Justin. Like, people don't think about the supply chain, and I'll use a snowstorm in Washington, D.C., right? You don't think about it until after all the milk's off the shelves because we haven't had a delivery, right? And everything is such an on-demand kind of delivery process that, we don't think about it. And to your point, that's the way it should be, right? As a general consumer, you shouldn't think about it. Your product should just be there. I think that's one of the reasons why we focused a lot on National Logistics Day, and we focus a lot of our attention on just trying to create understanding of how complex the system is, how important the system is, and why members of Congress and then, ultimately state legislatures as well have to kind of pay attention to this, because it is so important. But there are so many kind of points where we have to improve what we're doing, not only from an efficiency perspective, but a safety perspective, for making the life of things like drivers easier, and just understanding that. And I think part of the challenge for us, yes, is that basic education, so that people know that these issues are out there, and know that where the kind of choke points in the supply chain are. I'll just use cargo theft again. When I tell people cargo theft and strategic fraud, by some estimates, is a $35 billion a year problem. That
And it's only as that has actually only gotten bigger from I think like 2008 when the FBI conducted a study. It was like about 15 billion back in 2008. So it's almost twice as big, if not bigger.
And that's probably a conservative number, right? There's a lot of theft that happens that doesn't get reported for a whole slew of reputational reasons and other reasons, right?
Absolutely, that is a pretty giant problem. I don't know how you're doing on time, Daniel, but I did have one more question regarding like the broker liability stuff that's been taking place recently. If you have any thoughts around that, it seems like there's Sixth Circuit reversed TQL's victory. Could you give any insight around that topic or any topic regarding the broker liability recent news?
So obviously, it's a huge issue for our community. It's something that's been obviously matriculating through the courts. We've got some wins, we've got some losses. There's a huge case that C.H. Robinson is leading to the Supreme Court, and so we'll kind of see how that plays out. Hopefully, the court will reaffirm the idea that the preemption exists and that the liability protections are there. We're also working this through the congressional process. There's something called the Motor Carrier Safety Selection Standard Act that is
separate from this. Is that separate from the CH thing? Just so I don't confuse people.
Separate, yeah.
Okay,
so this is the C.H. Robinson is a judicial action. So they're actually suing. So they're trying to get to the Supreme Court and they're petitioning the court. There is a legislative process. It is a safety standard process. So the idea here is that we create a standard for brokers to follow in terms of carrier selection. The primary goal of this is to enhance safety on the nation's highways and to ensure that when brokers are making the selection of carriers, they're doing it in a way that meets a basic threshold for safety, primarily focused on that you're using a carrier that has operating authority, that has completed all of the necessary paperwork, that DOT has essentially said, yes, this carrier has met all of our basic regulatory requirements. The other side of the coin is by creating a standard, you'd also reduce some liability risk for brokerages. But that is a secondary goal for against the safety goal. So the reality is that, as this matriculates through the courts, we'll see where we end up. Obviously, the Supreme Court, the petition to the Supreme Court is going to be the most impactful, and we'll see what happens there.
Justin, any thoughts?
I wish you guys the best on your mission here. I did find out the final cost of that project I was looking for in Wyoming during our chat here. So it was $34 million for this project. And it built just under 200 parking spots. So we break that down. It's roughly $170,000 per parking spot for a truck.
In Wyoming?
Yeah, in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming.
Wow.
So it's gonna be a challenge trying to get the dollars for this to work out.
Yeah, that will be. I'm also gonna try. Grok 4 came out yesterday, and I'm gonna try to ask it to go in and calculate what is an efficient amount of spending per parking spot. What would be considered an efficient amount? And we'll see how much $100,000 is off by. Or what? Sorry, Justin. What was it again? It was $100,000.
$170,000 per parking spot. Yeah.
Yeah, seems outrageous. It's like a house per parking spot, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. It's the cost of a truck per parking spot.
It is.
It's actually closer. Yeah, it's like a new Pete is basically 170, I think, unless it was stayed at like 210. I know it went up to 210 like during COVID when there was a part shortage, but I don't know, maybe it went down. So, but anyway, Daniel, well, thank you for joining in with us today. We'd love to have you back on, of course. And I don't know if you have any closing thoughts as well too that you'd like to share. How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I was like, it's the second time on. I really like talking with you guys. I think it's just great to kind of engage on the issues. I would say just to your audience again, if you have the opportunity or you have the time, we have digital advocacy tools on our webpage. You can tell your member of Congress to support some legislation that TIA is supporting to try and mitigate the impacts of cargo theft and strategic fraud. You can learn more about our issues. I'll share the link again. I think you guys have got it. So But feel free to visit our website and engage with our organization. You do not need to be a member to use our digital advocacy tools. And if you are a member, please consider coming to Washington, D.C. in September for our policy forum flying.
Oh, there's in September.
Mhm.
There's what are the dates?
Of September 15th to the 17th.
Okay. I may have a wedding, but we'll see if we can. That'd be cool to probably make. So.
That'd be great. It'd be awesome. I mean, again, we make all the appointments for you. You engage with your specific members of Congress and your delegations. You talk with their staff. We essentially provide all of the logistics support for you. We do, I think last year we had 120 people come in, and we did several hundred meetings. So.
Wait, this is actually pretty legit. So we can like literally talk to Congress individually.
Yeah, no, you do it with your state. We do it by state delegation. So you'd go with the members of
the state that which we're from.
Texas or from, yeah. So you would do it with other people. You wouldn't necessarily go by yourself, but.
All right, Justin, get your bags packed. We're heading to DC. We got a lot to say.
I'll drag my rep along. Jeff Andrew, he's on the transportation subcommittee.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Dan, I will definitely follow up with you on that. That's for sure. So
for sure, absolutely.
Thanks for coming on, Dan. We'll look forward to having you on again.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, guys.
Absolutely. Take care.
Nice chatting with you.
That is super interesting. I think that a lot of people might be interested in the fact that they will be able to like just directly talk with I think it's face to face. Is that how you understood it?
That's what it sounded like to me. I really hope they put up some kind of barriers, or I'm very curious to see who shows up.
Yeah, I imagine it's probably going to be limited to TIA members.
Sure. You can't just have like anybody from the public showing up. There's some crazies out there, but I applaud their efforts for actually reaching out to the public and saying, hey, we want to hear from you guys, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot that they can hear from.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I definitely am gonna let a couple people like know that are doing a lot of this investigation stuff on PradeX, because I think a lot of it, while it's gotten some traction, clearly, because at least from what it seems like, Sean Duffy went out, came out and like made that big, announcement. So it seems like, a lot of the community shouting into the void is working. I think there's still a lot of things that like maybe aren't being per se addressed, in my opinion. Like my big thing was about like email fraud in particular. I haven't seen really much being done around that yet. I don't know. Actually, I don't think I asked you about that, like your thoughts around the email, like any of the email proposals that I had. Like, do you have any thoughts around whether or not it makes sense to impose additional requirements on some of these carriers? How would you look at it from a carrier perspective?
Restrictions like requiring two-factor authentication, or
for example, like my proposal was kind of similarly how you have to go in and validate that you own a domain before you go and set up your like Gmail account, for your corporate Gmail account. You have to go in and basically wherever you own the domain, you have to go into the settings and you have to basically add a couple of records that Gmail provides you, so that Gmail or whoever is sending out the emails on your behalf basically authenticates and says like, hey, you actually own this domain. The domain in which you're sending it from is legit, and you're authorized to send emails from there. And I was thinking that there should be something that the DOT does, that they basically give you some type of a generated ID. You take that to your domain settings.
That's actually pretty good, as we see with a lot of social media sites, like the early days of forums and stuff. Letting anybody come into a community, create an account for free. They act like a jerk. They get banned. Well, guess what? They just come back again and again and again. So some of the early forums decided, okay, we're going to put up a paywall. It's going to be like nothing, like $1 a month or $3 a month. And that flushed out like 90% of all the trolls and bad actors. Just having that one little filter flushes out. So like it doesn't get rid of it permanently.
Completely, right.
But it gets rid of a lot of it. Plus, because they have some kind of payment method involved, if they try to come back again to throw more money at you, you know it's them, and you can block them from their payment. So it's just more hurdles that they got to go through. Because now, if I want to be a jerk on some Twitter or on some forum that I have to pay to get into, I got to get a new credit card, a new debit card. Like every single time I get banned, I got to
Right.
come up with some other new form of payment. So it's hopefully you want to make it more of a pain in the ass to like keep up that kind of behavior than it is to actually do it.
I mean, that's
So
basically what the whole during the X takeover or Twitter takeover, that's basically what they did, right? Is they put in a paywall like for the blue check mark, and they said like this is the only way to like increase the cost of what it.
yeah,
They
there were some
increased the cost
there were
of a
some
bot.
good yeah, there were some good things and bad things with that too. Because the problem with the blue check is that anybody can get one now. You just pay $8 and you've got one. And then when Elon decided to turn on monetization, so once your account reaches a threshold of I think 3 million impressions a month for a couple months,
Mm-hmm.
you get a chunk of the ad share from that, and so that switches on the incentives of the bad actors. So we have these huge bot farm clusters over in India, where all they do is they just they post good morning back and forth to each other, just 24/7, like nonstop, and a lot of it is like kept off the
That's
timeline.
hilarious.
But and so once the platform started cracking down on that behavior, there were all these hashtags that were coming out saying like hashtag no payout, no premium. And it was because all these accounts in India were getting their payments blocked because they realized, okay, we see what you guys are doing. Twitter is being very like opaque with how they measure their payouts, because and it's good and bad, because
Yeah,
you as the platform, you don't want people really to know your rules, because then they can work around those rules and game the
and
system.
abuse them exactly.
Yeah, but then on the creator side, it's like I'm tweeting all day long, and one week my payout might be like $500, and then the next week I get like $6. Like what, and like
Yeah,
nothing changed as far as your impressions all stayed the same, so nothing changed. So that's very frustrating. I just think this is still fairly new. Like platforms like YouTube, Twitch, etc. They're much more mature payout ecosystems, so people know like, okay, I gotta act within these rules, meet these certain metrics, and as long as I'm being consistent with that, I can make a living on that. And right now, it seems to be the only way to make a living just tweeting is being like a partisan hack, or some guy in what's his name, Chong, Malaysia, being some guy in Malaysia that just sucks up to Elon 24/7.
I think it's generally there's no easy answer here for sure, like in
Yeah.
terms of the verification. But at the very least, like when it comes to freight, if like fraud that takes place in freight, majority of it is taking place over email, or at least is attempted to be taken over email. And I feel like that if there should be some way to backtrace an email to a DOT number.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like fundamental to me. That's always been fundamental thing number one. It's like it doesn't immediately solve the problem right then and there when you do it, but over time it allows like downstream software providers to be building on top of this authentic kind of like mini authentication system. It's not really authenticating you for access. It's really more so validating like, hey, this email actually is tied back to this DOT number in some way, shape, or form, and like they've actually confirmed the linking between the two, right? Like it just feels like having your house in order. I don't know how else to explain it. It doesn't solve the problem like right there then and there. It's just like, okay, this is what we use to communicate. These are our mediums in which we exchange information with other parties, right? And if you have no way of tracking that, it's just like, okay, well, it's like a wild, wild west. It's
Yeah.
free for all,
Hey,
and you literally never
five
catch up to it.
yeah, 5 seconds on Google search and Facebook groups. You can buy an MC number
Literally,
if you want. No
right?
problem.
And then how do I know which email, like, or not even, it's not even about email, it's about domain, right? Because the emails are created off of a domain. So you have one domain and then you can have many emails off of it. And how are we supposed to know like which ones, what's the history there between the domains that were being used on a DOT that does get resold? Right now you can't,
Yeah, and
sure,
these guys
there's
know these guys know what they're doing too. Like they're going after freight that like it's got to move no matter what, and so they slip in, they do a spear phishing attack. These are very sophisticated actors. So
Really
make no
sophisticated
mistake.
actors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they know
they
what they're
actually
doing.
hire engineers. They hire engineers to like create websites, completely realistic looking, websites and portals and stuff like this, and it can get pretty in depth, for sure. But and granted, I do want to clarify that I don't want to say that um, that I think that it will eliminate the problem entirely, right? Because you can have a transfer of ownership of an MC as well, and there's, how do I like explain this? It's like when you transfer the ownership of the MC, maybe the ownership of the domain also transfers over, right? So there's that case right there where you don't really know whether whether the owner maybe changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're probably describing like some kind of tokenization system where like trucking company ABC is registered with this token, and so if I get an email that matches their name but the token's different, it's like okay, huge red flag.
Yeah,
Um,
Gmail does this. Outlook does
yeah,
this already,
yeah,
right? Like it's called well, this certificate is like you use I think it's DKIM, and that, or I forgot what the other acronym it was, but you have to take like they give you like a token. Basically, they generate one for you. They say during your your Gmail setup process, like take this token, go and copy and paste it into your domain provider, wherever you got it, GoDaddy, whatever, Namecheap. You go in there, go into the settings, you just paste the value, and that's it. That's all you got to do, right? It's super simple. I don't think it's like going to be a really taxing thing that we'd be asking carriers necessarily to do, and it's probably somebody proposed like a blue check mark approach too, in a way to it. So it's like it can be incremental, right? It doesn't have to be all of a
yeah.
sudden one
You'd
day.
be surprised. There's a lot of Luddites out there, guys. Just like I just want to buy a truck and go haul freight, man. I don't want to be a tech whiz. I don't want to have to hire like an IT person. I just want to move my truck and make some money.
Yeah,
And yeah, it could be a huge pain in the butt. What would be nice too is if systems like passwords and stuff started going away. Like constantly having to rechange your password. Like there's two-factor authentication, tokens. What do they call those things?
well,
Key
passkeys. I
passes.
use passkeys for a lot of my stuff now
Passkeys.
too.
Passkeys is amazing. It's like
Yeah,
I don't know my email password for my Gmail.
right.
I haven't known it for like 2 years. I just use my passkey, and all the devices I have, I can authenticate trying to log in using one of those. So I mean, there's issues with that too. Like if you lose your phone or somebody pickpockets it from you, so you got to keep all your stuff on lockdown. You know.
I actually haven't checked um, I should probably check with some of the um, and like freight tech fraud players, like Highway, if they have like passkey support yet. But I think Danielle, Danielle put the original article together. I kind of just helped to kind of orchestrate it. But one of the things that was mentioned in there was that a lot of these freight tech anti fraud solutions are kind of like downstream of the problem, and they're kind of always playing catch up with the fact that especially with email domains, like you just don't know until somebody reports that, hey, this is a fraudulent email.
So much
Right?
of this stuff is reactive, not proactive.
Correct.
100%.
Right. And I think at least now that Dan mentioned that we can go and talk to Congress, I feel like that's a pretty good opportunity to at least make them aware.
Yeah, but then you run into the issue of like trying to explain like tokens and passkeys and all this stuff to your Congress critter, and you think logistics is boring. Try talking tech to these guys.
Yeah, that's true. I'm gonna try, and I'm gonna try to figure out how bad it is. And I don't know. I mean, something's got to be done about it. At the very least, like we'll try to take the explain to your grandma approach. If you can't explain it to your grandma, then maybe you're not explaining it simply enough.
Something we've kind of discovered over the years that really helps is like if I need to get a hold of say Ted Cruz, I don't need to, but if I really need to get a hold of Ted Cruz, I'm not going to pester Ted Cruz. I'm going to go search his name on Twitter and look at Twitter bios that mention that they work for Ted Cruz, and those are the people I'm going to hound.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and that's usually the best way. Like if you're really trying to get a hold of somebody high up and you got something really important to say, don't go to them because they've got filters up to block all that. Go to the people who work for them and say, hey, I got something you guys really, really need to pay attention to.
Actually, maybe the last thing that we do here before we jump off is I'm just curious because Grok 4 launched yesterday. Let's see if we can ask Grok. Tell me all the people that work for Ted Cruz. I'm just curious, like what's gonna.
Yeah.
I'm gonna see here. Let's share my screen here.
So we have one guy in Congress right now, Mr. Mike Collins out of Georgia. He's, as far as I know, he's the only former truck driver in Congress. The guy still has a CDL. I think he has a trucking company, but I'm not too sure. But his communications director reached out to me the other day. Mike is running for the Senate. So yeah, if you have a high enough profile on Twitter and you're like in your own little niche, your Congress critters underlings will reach out to you to say, hey, can you guys help us out with this stuff?
Yeah, that would be. This would be pretty cool if it actually worked. I wonder if. Oh, it's like searching the internet for this. So I thought, isn't it supposed to search X itself?
It will. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure it will do. Because I've asked it certain hey, can you look up company X, Y, and Z that I've mentioned, and it'll use my posts as a source.
Really? Okay. Yeah. I've definitely seen it cite X posts themselves too, but yeah, it's exploring like staff directories and stuff like this out.
I will say it is slow. So I like to play this game with my son with ChatGPT, 20 questions. Like you come up with a character, and then it has to try and guess it within 20 questions. And with ChatGPT, it's like boom, 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 boom. It just answers so fast. Really? I tried playing it with Grok 4 last night, and it's like 2.5 to 3 minutes per question because it's like cycling through its gears. Like, okay, what am I thinking of? What am I thinking of? What am I thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I
feel like this is, from what I'm reading, it's pretty powerful stuff, but it overthinks certain things, and that's what's nice too is you can tell it what model you want to pick. So it's like if I'm playing a silly little game, I don't need to be burning down half the Amazon per question.
Yeah, I'm actually very curious how much power goes into just
lots
per one question, right? Like answering one of these questions, right? Like in the minimum.
Let me look that up. There was Chat GPT, please and thank you cost.
Please and thank you cost. Oh man. The way that Grok 4 works, per my understanding, well, it's actually it's like the $300 per month model, but I was just talking about this yesterday. It spins up like 4 different what are called agents, and each agent goes in and does the research itself. And then at the end, all 4 agents kind of share knowledge with each other, and they compare what each other found, each agent found, and then it gives you one answer. And that does take some time. But I feel like the accuracy of the answer is going to be way better on Grok than it's going to be on any other platform, just due to the fact that it does way more thinking. It just takes longer and it's probably more expensive.
Deep thinking.
As you can tell, it's still searching right now. So.
Yeah. Back in April 15th, this Twitter user posted, I wonder how much money OpenAI has lost in electricity costs from people saying please and thank you to their models. And Sam Altman from OpenAI replied, tens of millions of dollars well spent. You never know.
Yeah, that's you always got to be nice to the AI. You never know how it's going to come back, maybe to bite you if you don't say please and thank you. So who knows?
Grok never came up with the answer yet. It's still spinning.
It actually, it didn't come up with anything useful. That's unable to find any public X profiles for staff members.
No, the easiest way is just go to the explore page on Twitter and type in quote Cred Cruz unquote or his Twitter handle, and then go to the people tab, and then it'll show like Ted Cruz's account and then any other accounts that mention Ted Cruz in their bio. Yeah,
I feel like that's a very underutilized feature of X is like the search capabilities. Even I don't know how to use them.
It's very clunky. So what I like to do is if I need to search for something like on a specific date or a specific topic, I'll ask Grok or ChatGPT hey, I'm looking for this. What do I need to type into the search bar to find it? And it'll spit out the long chain because it'll say from : blah 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 fill in blank / mention semicolon. It just
almost like code. It's almost like you're coding.
Yeah, and it's I don't know all this. I know how to search for people specifically, But as far as like a topic or a certain date, yeah, I just ask it like, hey, how do I ask this? And then I copy paste it.
It gives me early MySpace vibes where you're kind of like writing HTML to
Oh
like
my
modify
God.
your profiles. Do you remember
What
that?
was your background image in song?
Honestly, I have no idea what the hell my MySpace back in the day looked like. But yeah, that's a topic probably for another discussion. So, but anyway, I think we'll call it today. Thank you everybody for tuning in. We'll try to be back next week. We'll have some guests. We're going to be going to. I know the week of the 21st of July will be Frank Caviar will be in San Francisco. We'll be so maybe that week we probably won't have an episode, but maybe we will. We'll see. Maybe we'll do it live from SF. But that will also be like 6 a.m. So I highly doubt that. But we'll see. So
Beautiful
all
weather
right.
out there this time of year.
What's up?
It's a beautiful weather out there this time of year.
It's beautiful weather all year. And
All year, yeah, really.
So anyway, all right, man. I'll catch you later. Thank you everybody for tuning in.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah, bye.